Hey there, and welcome to SOS Stories of Survivors. I'm your host, Serina Dansker, and I'm so excited to introduce you to today's guest, Bill Magid. Bill is a man who's grew up in the 60s during a time where tragedy wasn't always spoken about. He's going to talk today about his quiet resilience, what's gotten him through love, loss, and given him hope throughout life. Life wasn't always done testing Bill's strength. He also had suffered some cancer scares later in life, and we're going to talk all about how his resilience and strength from his youth has helped him get through some of the tougher times. It's my pleasure to absolutely introduce Bill Magid. Welcome, Bill.
Oh, thank you, Serina. It's an honor to be here, and I love sharing my thoughts on the topics that you just described.
Thanks, Bill. I'm so excited you're here and to talk about things. Can you take us back to your childhood, what it was like growing up with your siblings in the 60s?
Sure. So we were in, I would say, kind of like a middle, maybe upper middle class family. We had a house. Both my brother and my sister. When you say special needs, especially with my sister, it was like more than special needs. She was born with cerebral palsy, and it wasn't just like a mild case. She never really grew. She was probably maybe 20 or 30 pounds her whole life.
Oh, wow.
And she was she was bedridden. And after she lived at home with us for a little while, and then my parents had to put her into a hospital and hospitalize her. And then she was the oldest, and then I was a year younger than her, and then my brother was 2 years younger than me. He was born with hydrocephaly, which is water on the brain.
Oh.
And he was unable. He was able to grow, and he was more functional, I would say, than my sister was, but still very dysfunctional. He couldn't walk. He couldn't talk, and we can talk about it more, but as he got bigger and bigger and bigger, it became impossible for my mother to continue to care for her. And I'll just point out here, the real hero in this whole story is my mother, because my mother, when she was a child, had polio.
Oh my gosh.
She was in a body cast for like 10 months. She lost the use of her left hand. She was able to use her arm to grasp things, but she couldn't, when my brother got to be 50, 60, 70 pounds, she couldn't move him around anymore. So ultimately he had to be hospitalized also when I was probably maybe, I don't know, 7, 8 years old, something like that.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, back in the 60s, we didn't talk about a lot of times special needs or people that had trouble with limbs and things like that. And we didn't talk about the unsung heroes, our parents back then. Can you tell me about some of your memories that stay with you today from your childhood?
Sure. Well, with respect to my sister, the memories were when we used to go visit, and she was down in Vineland, New Jersey, which is at the very southern tip of New Jersey. So it was like a 3-hour drive for us to get there or something like that. So it was basically a whole day type of ordeal. And we would go there, and then, they would bring her out, and she didn't do much, but we saw her and visited her. And then with my brother, he recognized me and he knew me. So I could play with him. I could take his towel and put it over his face and make him smile, and he'd start laughing and everything. And sometimes he was like cackling away like it was the funniest thing in the world. So I had a relationship with him. I remember asking my mother if he would ever walk or talk, and she said she didn't think so. But she took him to this rehab place to try and get him to walk. And that went on for a few months, but he was never able to make any progress.
Oh my gosh. It's incredible, the advances we've made in science and today. But back then there was less awareness, really less support. And I know you were a child then, but do you recognize any of the challenges? I know your mom had polio, so that was one thing, but were there other challenges that you think your parents had faced at that time?
Well, I really don't know what their financial situation was then, but I would imagine, this is not something that, the money doesn't just grow on trees. So I don't know if
Yeah.
if state or federal government supported it or what, but there's the financial end of it. And then, they just have to, it's something you have to live with your whole life. How do you deal with this? And how do you have another child that you have to raise in the midst of all of this, and you want them to have everything, and
Right. Well,
you know,
that's interesting. So, did you feel like you got less attention or anything like that? I guess back at this time, 'cause you were the one child that that I guess needed more focus, I guess, or didn't get as much focus. Maybe is what I mean.
no, I never felt that way at all. I mean, they gave me. It's funny because today there's so many different things that just didn't even exist back then.
Yeah.
I guess that's probably true of every generation, but in particular now, you have computers, you have video games, and kids come home from school and there's like a million places they can go and things they can do. Back then, you came home from school and you went outside and you saw some of your friends in the street, and you threw the ball around or whatever you did. And you didn't even think about like, oh, well, this one's got this and that one's got that. It's just like everybody was kind of the same, and you just kind of went on with your life. So you didn't even think about those things.
That's such a beautiful thing, and I think we lose out on that today. That openness, that carefree lifestyle.
Yeah, I think today parents are afraid to let their children go outside by themselves. So
Yeah.
sometimes you went outside and you came back and you heard your mother yelling for you. It's dinner time. The whole neighborhood knew you were about to eat dinner.
That's so funny. That's so true. I know that you had a transition at some point where your mom couldn't keep carrying your brother, and eventually she had put him into the same hospital where your sister was. Do you want to
Yeah.
talk about that?
Sure. What actually happened was my sister, as I mentioned, was down in Vineland, and my brother went into this place in Woodbridge, New Jersey, which is kind of in central Jersey,
Okay.
maybe 30 minutes from where we lived in northern New Jersey. And ultimately, they moved my sister into the same place. So they ended up in the same place, but it took, I'm going to say, maybe a year after my brother was there before she actually moved up.
Hmm.
But yeah, then they were in the same place, so we could visit them both at the same time.
Now, and then your life, you were kind of like, I guess since your siblings weren't living with you, you kind of had life as an only child. That's how I grew up, as an only child. So how was that for you?
Well, I think when I was younger, I don't think it meant anything.
Right.
I think I was just, that's the way it was. When you get older and you start hearing people talk about only children, they're spoiled and they do this,
Yes.
I don't know anybody who's an only child who's a good person. There's always you hear a lot of
They're
that
just
kind
jealous.
of stuff. And then you go, well, I'm not really an only child anyway, so I don't fall in that category. But yeah, you start thinking about that stuff, and I used to think about my parents had 3 children. Why was I the one that was quote normal and the other 2 weren't?
Yeah.
And why did they get hit with that and I didn't? That's not really fair. And
It's crazy, how life, hits certain people certain ways. But I do know that you had told me that both your brother and your sister passed at a young age while you were young as well.
Yeah.
Are you okay to talk about that?
Sure. Let me just describe kind of what happened, or how it all came down and they passed away. So it was I'd say like right around Christmas time, and we were getting ready to break for Christmas break at school, and I think there was one day left, and we were going on a vacation for like the first time ever. I'd never been on an airplane before, so this would have been the first time I was going on an airplane. We were going to Florida. My grandfather lived down there, and I guess it was around lunchtime, and the teacher in school said, somebody's here to pick you up. And what are they picking me up for? We're not going until tomorrow. So, I left, and then she told the class like what happened. And, I went in the car, and it was one of my parents' friends was driving me home, and he didn't tell me what happened either, but, my brother had passed away. So, I heard about it when I got home, and, our
so
trip was
sorry.
canceled, and I don't remember exactly what happened and what he died from. I think it was something with his breathing or his lungs or whatever. But anyway, we had the funeral and all that, and,
Wow.
and then a week later, and this I remember vividly. I was lying in bed, and it must have been like midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, and the phone rang, and I never heard my father curse before, but he got this phone call, and all I remember was him like, "What the F is the matter with this place?" Because they were both in the same place. And, it turned out that my sister had passed away 1 week later.
Oh my goodness.
So then, we basically had to do a repeat of the whole funeral and everything.
Oh my God, that's terrible. Now, how old were you at the time?
I had just turned 12.
And was grief something that you guys talked about in the family, or did you feel like,
We
you had to
didn't
carry it privately?
Yeah, we didn't talk about it, but I definitely felt it. And I remember, like, then, it wasn't like boys and men weren't supposed to cry.
Yeah.
You're supposed to hold back your tears or whatever.
yeah.
It's not manly to cry.
Right.
But I remember going into my bedroom and just like crying my eyes out
Oh.
because of what had happened.
Yeah. It's so sad. I mean, you think about the two children, and even though they weren't part of your life within the house, they were still part of your life, and just having that loss is a lot. And I remember being a child and growing up, and I had a cousin who was special needs, where his mentally, he was 5 years older than me physically, but mentally he was at my age. And I remember I was probably around 7 and he was maybe 12. And we used to play, and he was my favorite cousin because he actually paid attention to me, and we would, jump up and down on the bed and play games. And his mom, my aunt, really, was helping him with his studies and trying to, give him somewhat of a life that he could be part of. And unfortunately, I think when I was around 14 or even younger, maybe 11, she passed away from breast cancer, and her husband, his father, had put him into a home where I think even today he's still there, and he was never the same. And it's really sad what goes on. And I know that some of my cousins, had mentors or people that they would talk to about, their brother and what was going on in their lives. Did you have something like that?
The only one I could really remember is like when my brother passed away. I guess after the funeral, they had me go down to my aunt's house. She lived like just outside of Princeton, New Jersey, like a little bit over an hour from where we were in Lawrenceville, New Jersey. And my aunt used to ask me, like, she says, "Nobody's asking you, are you okay?" So I think, she was pretty astute. She was able to read people, and she knew what was going on. But, I said, "Look, I'm dealing with it in my own way." And, and I think one of the things kind of that it taught me, and that I learned, and I always kind of try and look at things this way throughout my life, is that there's some things that you can control, and there's some things that you can't control.
Amen.
And if you get bent out of shape about the things that you can't control, then you're going to have problems.
Yeah.
You got to look at the ones, you got to do the best you can with the ones you have control over, and the other ones you just have to deal with.
That's so true. Oh my gosh. And you went on to build an extraordinary career in finance. And how do you think your early experiences, gave you that drive, to define your success.
Well, I think what I had just said, I think
Yeah.
that was one of the things that, I kind of always live by is like, you can't control the things that are out of your control. So you have to look at that. And then I also, I don't know, I had this, I was always like really good at math. I think I got it from my father because he was an engineer. And so I was always interested in it. And they used to give me, my mother and father used to give me these little booklets with puzzles and stuff in them, and, mathematical puzzles. And I used to do them. And, I was kind of a geeky kid as far as that goes. and then, that's kind of what I got interested in. And then when I went to college, I went to study mathematics.
Yeah.
And, I was at the University of Pennsylvania, and they had the Wharton School there.
Wow.
And everybody was like, "Oh, Wharton's great, business school. Wharton's this, Wharton's that." And I said, maybe I should take some courses. You could take courses wherever you want if you were in the school. So I took some courses, took some economics courses, accounting courses, and I got interested in business. And that was kind of the route that I took. But I really, in terms of things that I had learned growing up, it was really that, that one premise was really, control what you can. And then my father always said to me is like, you always try and do your best. You can't, if you do your best and you don't succeed, there's not much you can do about it. You couldn't have done any better because you did your best. So
that's true. That's true. And so you went on to build a successful career, and then you have your beautiful wife, Jessica. And, I'm sure she's played a big role for you in healing and moving forward. And do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, she's all the things that I'm bad at, she's good at, and vice versa for that matter. So, she can't add 2 and 2, and I'm good at math. But
wait, let's preface this. But how long you've been married? First off,
it's going to be 42 years.
42 years. God bless.
It will be in July. Yeah. So she tells me when I look like, a mess, and how can you wear that shirt with those pants or whatever? And, how can you say that in public? And do you know what you're doing, or you're not paying attention to this or that or the other? But she's telling it to me because I need to know these things, and I'm not going to discover them on my own.
Oh my gosh, she's such a beautiful soul, your wife, and together 42 years married in July, and now you have 2 grown children and grandchildren. Do you want to talk a little bit about them?
Sure. So we have, and the nice thing is we all live near one another. So my son is a mile away from us.
Wow.
And he has a new baby. She's 6 months old, Sloan. And my daughter Marcy is 2 miles away from us. They both live in Livingston, which is the next town over from us. And she's got a 9-year-old girl, Jillian, and a 7-year-old son, Max. So they, we see them all the time, which is great. And that is the other thing that, out of all of this, you realize the importance of family and having a support system around you. So, we were always very close to our family and my aunts and uncles, and used to see them a lot. And Jessica was the same way. She's got 2 brothers and a sister, which by the way, when we got married, my mother said she's giving you the family that you never had.
Oh, that's so amazing. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's beautiful. And in a way, it's nice that you have your family around you, and you can appreciate it. That's what sometimes grief and loss does. It makes you aware of things. But life wasn't always easy, even being married with Jessica, because you got another unimaginable challenge thrown at you when Jessica got a diagnosis. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So I'm going to say it's probably about maybe 13 years ago or so now. And, she went for her annual mammography and found out that she had breast cancer. So we went, went around to a number of different doctors, and we ended up with Sloan Kettering. and she had to have chemotherapy and radiation and all that, and it took a while to heal, and thank God, it all worked out, and she's been cancer free for all those years now.
God bless that, but I'm sure that must have been a bit of a scare for you, going through all of that, especially, just having to be that caregiver, for Jessica.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is another one of those things is you don't like look at it and go, oh, I got to do this now or I got to do that. You just like do it. This is what do I have to do and where do I have to be and when and what. And we had to do things. We had to go into I mean, she lost all her hair. She had to get wigs.
Right.
We went to one of the premier wig guys around. And then when she had the chemotherapy, we had to go in and she had to sit there for like a couple hours getting it into, it goes right into your bloodstream through an IV. And then even though they had medications and stuff that you could take, you still didn't feel that great. A lot of times she was nauseous. I remember there was one time when she had, there's side effects from some of this stuff, and she had like a tremendous pain in her mouth. And I had to take her to the hospital. I take her to Sloan Kettering at like 5 o'clock in the morning. And, and then it took a while to get somebody to even get her, she was just like, just give me some drugs.
Yeah.
Get rid of the pain. And it took a while, but that when you're doing it, you just don't even really think about it. You just do it.
Well, that's what love is, right? You're just there for the other person, and you don't even think about what it means. You take care of them. But as Jess faced her cancer battle, you also were diagnosed. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so it was about a year afterward, and so I went to the football game. We have these tickets, these season tickets to the Giants. So I went to the football game, and I had like this splitting headache on the side of my head, and I had never gotten every time I gotten a headache before, which was quite often, was in the front.
Right.
Take a couple of aspirin or Tylenol or whatever, and it, generally would go away. This thing was on the side and it wasn't going away. So I went to the to like an immediate care facility the next day. It had calmed down by the next, it was okay, but I wanted to get it checked out. So I went in and I said, I don't know if it's like in my sinuses or what. And they kind of like looked at it and said, like, we don't see anything. Do you want a flu shot? So they gave me a flu shot. And then I went back to my office and I was telling my boss about it. And he's like, I don't know about you, but like, I had felt some things on my face. It felt like a tingling feeling on my face also. He goes, if I saw that, I'd go like see a neurologist or something like that.
Wow.
So I went and it got me scared. So I went and I saw a neurologist, and I went to his office and he did like all these balance tests and everything. And he said, I'm 99% sure that it's nothing, but I want to do an MRI just to make sure. And I went down the street, did an MRI, and then I went back to my office. I was just about to get on the elevator and my phone rang. And he said, you got to come back down here. We have a problem.
Oh my God. You must have been like, holy cow. I'm glad
I said,
went.
so what's the problem? And he said, well, why don't you come down here? I said, like, you can't keep me hanging. You got to tell me. He said, well, there's a tumor in there. And
oh my God.
But he calmed me down a little bit. He said, I've seen things like this before, and, we can deal with it or whatever, but, come down and I'll give you all the scoop on it. So I went around, and everybody that looked at it thought it was a benign tumor, but it as it turned out in the end, it was malignant. But
wow.
But the treatment for it was just to cut it out. There was no chemotherapy or radiation. And then they just had to keep monitoring it. And I had to go for MRIs at first every 6 months and then a year or whatever. And I had to have 2 operations. So I went to a couple places, and then like one place, this is where Jessica came in too, is like, we went out, we went to, I think it was NYU, and the doctor was saying, well, we have a whole team that comes in there, and like, we can't get it from the side of your head, we're going to go in like above your nose.
Oh my God.
And we walked out of there, and she's like, "You're not using this guy. There's no way." She said, "Your jaw is going to be hanging. You're going to be like, you're not going to be able to talk."
Oh my God. I love your wife. I do. She's so great.
So the other guy, the guy from Columbia Presbyterian, who we ultimately used, he
Right.
said, he goes, "I'm a one-man show. I've done this a million times.
Good, that's what you
and
want.
I can do it on Monday." The other ones were going to put it off for like 6 months. So I said, "I'm in."
Yeah, I don't blame you, because you want to get to that fast,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So they did it, and then once again, I was fortunate, and it turned out okay. I did have some side effects. I lost the hearing in my right ear.
Oh.
And then there were a couple other things and some balance issues and stuff like that. But it's it's the kind of stuff you just that kind of stuff you just deal with. It's a lot better than the alternative.
Well, throughout your life, just listening to your story, you have just resilience that has weaved its way through your life, through the struggles, through your experiences, through losing your siblings, through your wife's illness. I find that you have this sense of, I don't even know if you're aware of it, but you just have this sense of, well, this is just what you do. Can you talk about that?
It's kind of interesting because when I went for the surgery, I don't know if you remember, you and Brad went out with us. The surgery was on Monday, and we went out on Saturday.
Yeah.
And I think I said is the way I'm looking at it, the doctor said to me he never lost anybody on the table. So that gave me a little bit of comfort. But when I went in, I just said, "Look, I'm either going to come out and it's going to be better, or I'm not going to come out." So I said, just got to do it.
Well, but that's what I mean. That I love that about you. It's just, you're just going to do it. It's got to be done. Someone's got to do it if the outcome you want. And I find that so admirable. It's like my mom is struggling right now with cancer, and she's scared, and which of course is a normal reaction. But and sometimes like they want her to do a brain scan. She's like, "I don't want to know,"
Yeah.
And I guess at this point in her life, she's 86, and that's fine. But what would you say to someone like my mom, struggling here?
My mother she was a little bit old. She lived till she was 92, but they had noticed some sort of growth in her intestines and her colon, and they thought it could be like the start of colon cancer, which I think it was. But she didn't want to do. She basically said, "I'm not doing anything at this point in time. I'm not doing an operation in 92, and I'll just take my chance." And she lived for like another year after that. So it in some ways it is a personal decision, especially as you get older. You can't say to somebody, "Oh," but then on the other hand, there's so much medicine and technology today. Maybe there's something they can do, and maybe it won't be pain. You don't have to necessarily have to live a pain. If you knew for sure that I'm going to do that, if I do this, I might be alive, but I'm going to be kind of like a vegetable.
Right.
Then, that's an easier decision, or at least for most people.
I agree.
But if I think it's definitely normal to be scared. I was scared with all this stuff that I had, but then at the end of the day, I said, what are my choices here?
Well, you also had, you have a lot of, support. Jessica was there, and you've been through a lot of life's many twists and things. But if you today, if you could send a message to your siblings, what would you want them to hear? What would be something you'd like them to know?
Well, I want them to know that, like, I missed them, and that I wish that they could have had the same life as me and be with me on the holidays and stuff like that. I would go to games with us. It would have been great.
Mhm.
to have I mean, I see with with Jessica's brothers and sisters, and you know, I do a lot of stuff with them, and I see their relationship and everything. It'd be great to be able to be together with your family on the holidays, and you know,
I
I would
know.
tell them I missed them,
Oh.
and I wish they could have been around for all of this.
It's
And
you're
it
such a
wasn't fair.
you're such a beautiful soul, Bill. I got to tell you, you are my heart, and I'm gonna lighten it up a little bit for you. I'm gonna ask you, what is one small joy that never fails to lift your spirits? What is something that you go to?
Well, one thing I like to do, which kind of clears my mind, is swimming.
Oh,
So, you know, we have an indoor pool where I am, and I used to swim like a lot when I was young. I was on the swim team in high school, and
I didn't know that
so,
about
yeah,
you.
yeah, I was the captain of the swim team. And I gave it up as soon as high school was over, but I still like going swimming, and I still swim laps and all that. So you know, when you're swimming, especially if you're swimming in a small pool and you have to count how many laps are there, you can't really be thinking about anything else. So it kind of clears your head, and you know, for a half hour or so, you're just, you know, you're just doing your own thing, and nobody's bothering you, and you're not thinking about anything, and you know, it's clearing your mind.
I think that's awesome. All right, what's your favorite place where vacation spot to go to or to recharge your batteries?
Um, we've gone to a lot of times the vacations we go on are like beach type settings.
Mm-hmm.
So um, when we were younger, when we were first married, we used to go with Jessica's family to Puerto Rico to Dorado Beach.
Oh, nice.
So you know, I like that kind of setting. We went with our family, I think, one time later on, but we like to go on like a family vacation in a setting. You know, now that we have the grandkids too, they like last year we went to Florida, and it was a resort, and they were able to go in the pool every day. And
Oh, that's so nice.
then I try and play golf also. I'm not just been playing for a while now, and I'm still not very good, but but I like to play. And you know, that's another place where you're out there and it's beautiful, and it doesn't really matter that you're playing lousy as long as you're out in the sun and with you're with your family.
I agree. I agree. That's perfect. The perfect day. I think I if you could leave one piece of advice for someone facing their own struggles or loss or maybe illness, what would it be?
Well, you know, I don't want to make it's definitely not easy because there's all different kinds of illnesses, and you don't know like what kind of pain people are going through when they're experiencing it. But once again, I think if you kind of break it down to what you have control over and what you don't have control over, that helps a lot. Because even with, you know, with something like pain, maybe there is something that can be done for that because, you know, there's ways to control it. But the fact that you have maybe some sort of disease which isn't curable, maybe you can still live with it for a really long time, but
Yeah,
you have to, you know, you basically have to play the hand that you're dealt with,
it's
and
true.
it's not always the greatest one.
No.
So you just gotta move onward and you know do the things that you can to make your life and hopefully everybody else's around you better.
Yeah, I mean, I believe we all have our burdens, and I find that, you know, as I talk to more and more people and I learn about their stories, it's, you know, we all have a quiet resilience. A lot of us do. And we all go through that storm, you know, before we get to the other side. And some of us, and we all grieve differently. And you know, my own story, you know, with my son passing, it's something I never thought I'd go through, but you do move forward, you know. You never forget. You never. Um, you just learn to live with that grief, you know.
I,
Um, Go ahead.
I was going to say everybody deals with it differently,
Yeah.
and some things work for some people, and some things don't work for those people. So you have to kind of figure out what works for you. Um, and then and go that route. But I think everybody, if you try and look at it objectively, there's some things that you're just never going to get answers to.
Yeah.
Why did your son die?
Yeah.
Why were my siblings born with diseases? Why
Yeah.
why was I normal? I don't know if I was normal, but back then that was what how I was classified. But
Oh my God. Well, and that's the thing. And that's a rabbit hole. Like I've tried so hard not to go down is like the whys and the what ifs, the could haves, because there's no point to that,
there's no answers to a lot of these questions too. And yeah, if you did something differently, who knows what would have happened then? Might have been, who knows?
Well, and that's the thing. And so, as we talk to our listeners and talk about our struggles, we all have them, and we all have different ways of healing. And I think one of the things is, it's like you say, Bill, it's you can't control certain things. You can only control your reaction to those things. And I think learning about yourself and how to love yourself and to give yourself grace for getting through things and space is so important.
I was just going to add, I think the other thing that we touched upon it a number of times, but the other thing that's really important is your family.
Yes.
And not everybody has a family that they can lean on and provide support. In a lot of cases, the family's the problem. So,
well, that's true.
So I think, if you don't have that support system, then you have to seek a different one. And there's also publicly available or, other support systems or privately available support systems that people can reach out to. So, if I had to tell someone what to do, I think, you get the help you can from the people that you know. And if you can't get help from the people that go get help from people that you don't know.
That's really great advice. I find that my friends, my family, of course, was there. My friends have been a great source of support. My community, my church, all were great avenues of support. And also, there's lots of wonderful therapists, and there's other, there's retreats nowadays that you can go on to. Meditation, yoga, like all of these things I find are healing.
And religion can be a healing for a lot of people too.
Yes, it is. And for me, I've rediscovered religion and my faith and prayers, and I relish that time I have alone and talking with God and the universe, and I find that I'm much more spiritual. I think at this stage of my life. Do you want to add anything?
I hear about the spiritual side of things a lot, and I'm not going to say that I agree with all of it, but part of it is I think I'm just like too analytical to to say, well, that's what could be happening, but no one knows for sure. So
no, you don't. But I usually end every show with a poem for my son Scott, and I think the poem I'm going to choose today is Camp, because I think it really resonates with your personality. You're just love and light and kindness, and just his poem just speaks to me about you. And so if it's okay with you, I'm going to share it. It's called Camp, and it says, as I look around myself, I feel so compelled to smile and hug. The vibrations and energy coming off others, causing a chain reaction that fractions the results of happiness. Happiness is different for everyone and anyone, but all people conjugate you, the source of power that people associate. Love, kindness, smiles, and hugs, even though there are so many bugs. Camp is a place where anyone can be anything, but most are true to themselves. Camp is a place where people's true colors are shown, where people accept others for who they are, not who they know. Camp is a place to learn from others, and not just stick to yourself. The concept of acceptance is easy to grasp, but not to execute. Most people just reboot, go back to the lines that society draws for them. Most people can't comprehend how a few nice words could mend a broken soul. That almost feel off the deep end. Can't people know this? And now you do too. Spread the word to stop the impending doom that so many souls see so soon. It's just powerful for a 14-year-old
yeah,
kid
that's amazing.
to feel and to write about. But it's, and he's right. When you're around people and you're surrounded by love and light, it makes it easier to deal with whatever it is you're going through, your anxiety, your losses, health scares. And I'm just so grateful you were able to share your journey with us today, Bill. Thank you so much.
Well, as I said, it was my honor to be here, and I appreciate you inviting me, and hopefully people who listen to this get something out of it and it helps them somehow.
So, but before we go, I just have to ask you, what's next for you, Bill? What's next on the horizon?
Well, when I was at my doctor the other day, he told me he was retiring at the end of the year. He's like a year younger than me or something like that. And I said, well, I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and I'm really not at the position where I can retire. And he said to me, he goes, well, one quote, he goes, I don't know who said it, but one famous quote is a man on his deathbed said, there's nobody who was ever dying who said, I didn't work enough. So I think, I'm at the point where there's a few deals that we're working on, and when they run out and run to fruition, then probably like in the next couple of years, I'll retire from that, and then hopefully be able to keep myself busy. That's the hard part. Is
the
like,
grandchildren. You have grandchildren, and Jess will keep you busy.
Yeah, the grandchildren. They go to school every day, and they get into their lives, and they don't want to hang around with like some old guy.
I don't know, Bill. I think it could be kind of fun hanging out with you. That's awesome. Well, thank you again. Thank you to our listeners. And if you like today's show, please go on my podcast on sosradio.live, SOS Stories of Survivors. Like us, subscribe, donate. If you want to advertise, feel free to DM me. And remember, SOS Stories of Survivors, where survival sparks the soul. Thank you for joining us. Take care.